Hello, and welcome to the 50th episode of the BA Brew. I'm Debbie.
I'm Tom.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jonathan.
And today we're talking about something that I think applies to a lot of people, which is trying things out or working on something that's outside your comfort zone. And for those of us on this BA Brew, three of us recognize the being outside your comfort zone because when the fourth person on the BA Brew, Tom, suggested that we do this 50 episodes ago, I think there was a sharp intake of breath. And as a result of that, we thought, well, Tom has subjected us to being outside our comfort zone on the BA Brew, so we need him to actually come along and tell us what takes him out of his comfort zone. Before we go to Tom, let's start with you, Jonathan. What situations have you encountered that have taken you outside your comfort zone?
So I'm going to share one that it's not to do with work, although it kind of was. Silly me said yes to saying I'd take part in a Strictly Come Dancing competition to raise money for charity. So that sounded like a good idea. Something I don't mind dancing. I've done a bit of dancing in the past, but anyway, I was fine with this. And we done loads of training and prep, and we done a rehearsal event, and I'm stood in this queue of people to go onto stage in a theatre, and there's about 2,000 to 2,500 people in the theatre, and I felt fine until I stepped onto the stage, and it literally took my breath away. I was very much outside of my comfort zone, and I didn't do very well in the dance competition. And for those who've seen me dance, maybe you could say, well, that's understandable. But I had practiced at this point, and I knew my tango and I knew my waltz, but on stage it was the nerves, I suppose, that got me. But the last occasion when I was outside my comfort zone was this Saturday just gone, when I'm about to take part in a 5K race. I think I see it as a race. And Mike was there, and Mike had suggested, let's do a warm-up. And I started doing this warm-up and realised that we were going a bit too far and I might not have enough energy to get around this 5K track. But I was very much outside my comfort zone. But one of the things I'd say is you've got to recognise when you're outside your comfort zone, and if you can, prepare mentally for how you'll deal with it. And if you're like me, Mike's a very much more experienced runner, talk to someone about it that you trust and you can confide in. And obviously Mike took the mick out of me, but and
that goes without saying, Jonathan. So that's fine. So what about you then, Mike? Talking about Mike, any situations where you've been outside that comfort zone?
Yeah, probably the most memorable one is to do with beekeeping, because I got interested in beekeeping by traveling a long way down to Southampton on a regular basis with one of my colleagues from a previous work. And it was quite a long journey, and we talked about all our different hobbies, and he was a beekeeper, which got me interested in beekeeping. So I signed up to do a beekeeping theory test. And that was all fine, happy with that, all of those courses. But the outside my comfort zone came on the first occasion when I had to have a bee suit on and experience what it was like with sort of thousands of bees buzzing around me, trying to get a piece of me. That was a little bit scary, but I think it was. I built it up much more in my mind and forgotten about some of the protections I got. So the suit, the gloves, etc. And I hadn't really thought about those. Actually, after a while, the nerves sort of settled down when I realised they weren't really going to try to kill me. And subsequently, I carried on as beekeeper and have been quite happy taking other people who are petrified of bees to be stung by my bees.
And you keep bees now, don't you, Mike? So
yes,
you've been doing it for a while.
Yes, I did take both my son and my daughter along to the bees and took them outside of their comfort zone. And unfortunately, they both got stung. So it didn't work out quite so well for them. And neither of them have attended since.
Okay. I think that's one I'm just going to write off my list as well then, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Tom, coming to you. When have you been outside your comfort zone?
Well, Debbie, my heart rate, which I've just been checking, is actually sat at 109 right now. So I'm very much happier behind the camera telling you off for messing up the intro than sat here speaking. So yeah, it's difficult. It's new, and worried to hear myself waffling.
Yeah. And do you know something? It's really funny because one of the things I always think of as being outside my comfort zone was the very first time I was asked to do a keynote presentation at the BA conference. And I tried various things, well, everybody's must agree I've got to do it, and we need to check with so and so, just hoping that somebody was going to say, no, we don't want her to do it. And of course, they didn't. And it really was. It sounds a bit daft, but it really was outside my comfort zone because to me, if you're doing a keynote at a conference, the expectation's a lot higher rather. So I really know what you mean, Tom, because that sense that you could just waffle and you could completely mess it up is not pleasant. It's not pleasant, but we have to do it, don't we, guys?
Mm. Do you not think it makes you feel alive when your heart rate's up, you're just about to be beyond your comfort zone, or you're in that beyond your comfort zone? You really feel alive. It's kind of, the senses are heightened, I think, and you notice it. And if you don't ever push yourself beyond your comfort zone, you don't know what your possibilities might be. So there's a big reward as long as you do it safely and you've done risk assessment and whatnot, and you've thought about, I don't want to get stung by bees, and what's the reward there? Well, Mike can have a laugh at me because I've been stung by a bee. It's kind of, I'll give that one a miss. But if it's worth it, you get a reward, don't you? It can be quite exhilarating.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, actually, Jonathan, because there is something about going outside your comfort zone and doing it. Don't you think? I mean, Tom, by we get to the end of this BA brew, and you're not going to think, I did it.
Give me about 3 days.
I think for me, it's there's so much. There is preparation you can do for anything, so you can prepare for things. But having that little spark of, well, I can't prepare for that bit. I don't know how I'm going to feel. So that actually being in front of the bees, the live bees that time, I prepared because I knew what gear to wear and I knew to smoke the bees, etc. But until that, you take that last little step and then see, and then, as you say, you learn from it. So I learned more from my son and my daughter actually about when they got stung. And obviously, Jonathan, if I took you to see the bees, you might not get. There might not be as much chance of you getting stung. But there's no guarantees. But hey, it's a little bit of excitement there potentially. But seriously, I think there's opportunity, isn't there, when you put yourself beyond your comfort zone. Over the last 3 years, I have done so many new things with Assist that I couldn't possibly have imagined doing before, which took me beyond my comfort zone. It wasn't things I was used to doing, and I just think it's been really. I couldn't imagine 3 years ago doing some of those things, and I couldn't imagine how I would have felt about that. I think I would have frozen on the spot actually if you just said, "These are all the things we're going to do."
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things I remember over the last few years is obviously we went very much more into the sort of virtual environment for working. And we had a BA conference that went online in 2020. And I had to do a certain part of that conference. I had to sort of not just present, I had to run it as well. And as part of that, I had to use 3 different technologies across 2 different platforms. And I had to sort of make it all look seamless. And while I knew there was technical support there, I also knew it was me who was on screen making this all happen. And I did ask for a run through and we walked through it and I had all that prep and all that. But on the day, I was generally thinking, as we all do, this could go horribly wrong. Anyway, it all went absolutely fine. And then, and I'm going to name him, Nigel Owen, the keynote speaker, fooled me with a very cruel joke just as I thought I'd got to the end of it. And I thought my heart was going to stop. But I learned a lot about myself in that process.
Mm. Mm.
And I learned a lot about him, which is never present with him, basically, because he is a joker. But it is interesting how, we all have our strategies for dealing with it, So, Tom, I'm going to ask you, because you've seen Mike, Jonathan, me, and some of the others in the BA Brew crew. You've seen us over the last couple of years getting to grips with this, yeah? Have you seen us, working outside our comfort zone, and how do you think we've evolved?
Definitely. It's night and day, to be honest. If you go back and watch the first episode, Who Moved My Cheese, you're all just quieter. Where now, especially Jonathan, you're all just you've almost forgotten that we're recording, which I certainly haven't. So yeah, I'm so proud of each and every one of you.
Oh,
Especially
thank you.
with the kickback I got when I first kind of broached the podcast subject.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's hilarious that it's Jonathan you particularly point out for being much noisier and chatty than he was at the start. We're all going to laugh about that a lot, Tom. Okay.
I still remember
But
the first time that the camera was put in front of me. We were in the office and I just froze. There was a camera crew there. Tom was there. And Chris was there in the office. And I was supposed to talk about something. I knew what I wanted to say, but the nerves took over and, heart rate, sweaty palms, kind of dry mouth, all those things kicked in. And there was pressure, time pressure. And I'm not sure I could cope with what you did live at that online conference, Debbie, because you that wasn't a practice run, because the video going wrong, they could just edit the thing. Well, you were live, and Nigel Owens pretending that he didn't have the BA of the Year envelope. It's comedy value, comedy gold, and it's in the folklore of the BA conference forevermore. But yeah, absolutely not nice for you.
That was a sharp intake of breath moment for me as well. I'm thinking, okay.
yeah, it was terrible. Mike, let's ask you, what do you do then? If you are going outside your comfort zone, and I'll be honest, you will never get me anywhere near a swarm of bees.
Right, okay. I'll have to bring them to you then, won't I?
Say things like that. But so, what sort of strategies do you use? Because I think we all have our own strategies for dealing with situations, don't we?
Yeah, and I think there's a number of things really. Being aware of the things you can prepare for. So there are some things you can think about beforehand, and just making sure you prepare for those. I used to be terrible at catastrophizing and thinking about what's the worst that could go wrong. And I think realizing that actually the worst isn't likely to happen. That really is the extreme. And then sort of stepping back from that and just thinking, right, well, if that happens, how am I going to handle that? I think up until the moment that the thing starts, so I'm trying to think of another example. At running club, I'm leading the running club that we have on a Monday and a Thursday night by producing the routes and keeping the social media page going, etc. But I hadn't thought of it as that because I was just keeping a Facebook page and putting some routes in. But it wasn't until Saturday when we were talking about it at Parkrun that sort of light came on, and I thought I didn't sort of step up to do that. I just saw a gap and started planning routes and been doing that. We've got this wonderful community running group, which it's really kept running by the people turning up. So I just feel like I've got a little contribution to that. But it's identifying how I could contribute to that kind of took some of the fear away. So I wouldn't have stepped into that role, but I have stepped into that role because there was a gap there. But it's, I guess, using the transferable skills that I've got from other experiences. That's probably the way that I've addressed some of those scary moments. Well, how can I apply other stuff I've learned?
It's interesting, actually, isn't it? Because, and I know I say this a lot, but I always think I've got this business analysis toolkit, and it extends to all sorts of different areas. And quite often, if I am concerned about something or there's a situation that's going to make me feel I'm outside my comfort zone, I can analyze things using that toolkit. And one of the things that I do is to think through scenarios. And you can sometimes think, well, okay, what is the worst scenario? And, all of the things that could go wrong. And then you can try and address some of them. But also beyond that, then I sometimes think, well, if that's the worst scenario, what's the risk associated with that? What could be the worst outcome? So you can use a sort of an analytical approach to dealing with it as well. And I sometimes find that quite useful. I really do. And obviously, some of the skills within that toolkit are also the softer skills. And, we know things around presentation and facilitation as well. So those sorts of skills help too. So I find that quite useful.
I'm just going to say practice, Debbie. So practice, pilots, feedback, learning and reviews, I think are all things that we can apply as well. But then I'm going to throw in something that's maybe a bit odd and it doesn't always succeed for me. Just forget about it. Turn off that analytical mind, stop catastrophizing and doing scenario analysis. Just own it and own the fact that you're nervous or, you're outside your comfort zone and recognize it. But, just don't overthink it, because we can all overthink things. And that might not be helpful for us. Sometimes we've just got to have a bit more confidence in ourselves that we can do this. And if the worst happens, I say the wrong thing on a presentation or on this pod, for example, well, I know Tom will edit the thing out, so it's all fine. It's kind of just get on with it.
So basically, Tom, you're our fallback.
Yeah. That's something that I've taken to doing when I'm doing open mics, which I've started doing again after 2 years of not doing, which I found myself getting so nervous and pre-planning every single pick and strum of the guitar, where again, you can practice, but I almost found it was not helping the fact that, okay, just go rehearse the whole set. It's an open mic. No one's actually listening. So my answer to it became, well, if I don't know what I'm going to play, how am I going to forget it? Just play whatever I decide to do at that moment.
That's very philosophical, isn't it? You could apply that to life, wouldn't you? Say, well, I don't know what I'm going to play, so let's go for it.
Yeah. But it's the same in a presentation or a pod. I don't know what I'm going to say, but nobody else knows what I'm going to say. So therefore, what I say is what I say. There we are. I'm beginning to sound like Jean-Paul Sartre now, a very weak one, obviously. Do you know something, though? Many years ago, one of the most out of my comfort zone things I ever did was to study for my doctorate, because I wasn't sure if I was up to it, but I really wanted to give it a go. And on the first day, the professor who was leading the program said one thing, and I've never forgotten it. And every time I'm in a situation where I'm thinking, oh boy, is this now me pushing it too far? And am I going to be able to do this? I remember this phrase, because he said, you are going to feel like that. And all I can say to you is, suck it up. And I've never forgotten that. And it sounds quite harsh, but do you know, it's one of the most helpful things anybody ever said to me. Just suck it up and get on with it.
Get on with it.
So I do.
Wow. I really like that. That's a piece of advice that my 10-year-old gives me quite often, and he's obviously not as esteemed as the professor at the university, but it's just logic. Just get on with it. Get over it. Is one of the phrases he'll say to me. I'm like, well, and it's quite amusing, because then when he's moaning about something, I'll say, get over it. And he knows exactly where that phrase has come from, because he's used it with me. I was just going to say something about balance as well. So if you've got that, I don't know, the open mic event, Tom or Debbie, your keynote, if that's the only thing in your life, you might put more pressure on yourself, as you step outside your comfort zone to do that thing. But if you've got balance in terms of family, friends, work, hobbies, then it kind of reduces the impact of just that one thing, because it's just one of those things. So if it does go wrong, it doesn't go as well as you expect, you've got balance because you've got other things that keep you grounded and keep you kind of balanced, I suppose, as a human, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm making my point very clear. Tom, does
Yeah,
that not
no, you
resonate
are.
at all?
No, definitely. To use the open mic as an example, you're performing. Yes, you're doing, or yeah, you're playing music and there's people listening. But if you think about it, are those people there to listen to you, or are they there to get drunk and hear some music at the same time? Not listen to, hear. And so you've got to figure out, well, I'm not performing for them at the end of the day. I'm performing for myself. So the balance there comes in. So why am I worried about what they're thinking where they're not really even paying attention to what I'm doing? So why don't I just suck it up and enjoy myself?
Yeah. And I think that is a very good note to end on, because actually, sometimes, as you said earlier on, Jonathan, there is something energizing, if not exhilarating, when you do this. And if you can tell yourself, let's just enjoy it, then actually you've learned something anyway. And I think you can get a bit more out of it. So that's a very nice note to end on. Thank you, Tom. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of BA Brew. I've really enjoyed this discussion. It's made me think about a few things. I'm trying not to think about bees, Mike, but it's made me think about a few things. If anybody who has enjoyed this episode would like to suggest some ideas for a further discussion or even take part in a BA Brew, please contact us at babrew@AssistKD.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.